books are in French, but I'm going to read them to you in English. This story says, I am afraid of trying new things for the first time, but I can always talk to my parents. If I'm going to try something for the first time, I'm going to talk to my parents. Okay, they're going to give me help. Sometimes I try a new food that I've never eaten before. Sometimes I try to climb higher on the play structure than I've ever been before. Sometimes, for the first time, I go on a hike. There are times when I have to try something for the very first time. I try to count money. I try to dress myself all by myself from head to toe. I try to take messages on the phone. I love this one because we don't take messages on the phone anymore. But a long time ago, we used to have to do that sometimes. But maybe you have to take a message for your parents and pass it on. Sometimes when I have to do something for the very first time, I'm a little afraid. Sometimes my parents ask me to take care of my baby sister. I might be a little afraid of that. Or I might try a new game. Or I might try reading a new book. I'm sometimes afraid to try something new, but I'm very proud of myself when I try. As long as we try something, right? We don't say we're not going to do it. Now, here's a story, and maybe you recognize this guy. In English, they call him Franklin, and in French, they call him Benjamin. I don't know why they changed the name. I always found that funny, but we'll call him Benjamin, the turtle. Maybe you know him a little bit. I love this story. So Benjamin could slide and swim down the river. He could count forwards and backwards. He could button up his shirt. He could tie the laces on his shoes. He could do all those things. But there's one thing he couldn't do. He was afraid of small, dark spaces. And this was a big problem for Benjamin because, as we all know, Benjamin was a turtle. And he had to get into his shell. But he was afraid to go inside because it was so dark. So he dragged it behind him. At night, his mother would light up his shell with a flashlight, and it would be nice and bright. And she said, you can go in there. There's nothing to be afraid of. But he knew when he went in there, there were going to be monsters and other scary, gooey, slimy things. So Benjamin decided he should go and get some help from the people that lived near him. So he went for a long walk and he met a duck. And he told the duck, he said, you know, I'm really afraid of things. Like, I'm very afraid of dark, small spaces, and I can't get into my shell because I'm so afraid. Do you think you could help me? And the duck said, well, I'm afraid of deep water. And when nobody's looking and no one could see me, I put floaties on and go into the pond. Do you want to borrow my floaties? Benjamin, I don't think so, he said. I'm not afraid of deep water. Next, on his travels, he met a lion. And he told the lion, you know, Mr. Lion, I'm really afraid of small, dark spaces. I can't get into my shell. I'm so afraid. Do you think you could help me? Well, maybe I can, roared the lion. I'm afraid of really loud noises. So when nobody's looking and they can't see me, I put on my earmuffs. Would you like to borrow my earmuffs? I don't think so, said Benjamin. I'm not afraid of loud noises. Next, Benjamin met a little bird. He said, oh, Mr. Bird, maybe you can help me. I'm really afraid of dark, small spaces. I'm so afraid that I can't get into my turtle shell. Do you think you could help me? And the little bird said, well, maybe I can. You know what? When I'm flying really high in the sky, I'm scared I might fall because I get dizzy. So when no one's looking and I'm all by myself, I use my parachute so I won't fall out of the sky. Do you want to borrow my parachute? Said Benjamin. No, I don't get dizzy. I'm not afraid of that. So now Benjamin kept going and he met a polar bear. He said, pardon me, Mr. Polar Bear, but I have a problem. I'm really, really afraid of small, dark spaces, and I don't know what to do about it because I can't get into my shell at night to go to sleep. Can you help me? So Mr. Polar Bear said, well, maybe I'll try. I'll tell you something I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of cold, the real, really cold nights that we can have here. So when nobody's looking and I'm all by myself, I put on warm winter clothes before I go to bed so I won't be afraid. Maybe you'd like to borrow my winter clothes. Benjamin thought, no, I'm not afraid of the cold. So Benjamin was getting really tired and really hungry. He started to head back home, and on his way back, there was his mom. Oh, Benjamin, Benjamin, I'm so glad I found you. I was so afraid that you got lost. And Benjamin said, do you mean mothers can be afraid? I thought mothers were not afraid of anything. Oh, no, we can be afraid too. I was afraid to lose you, Benjamin. Oh, I didn't know that. So now Benjamin told his mom where he went to get help. She said, how did that turn out for you? Did you get any help from anybody? Well, he said, first, I met, oh, that's the wrong one, pardon me. First, where's the first person you met? Oh, yeah. First, I met a duck. He was afraid of deep water, offered me his floaties, but that didn't really help. Then I met a roaring lion, and he was afraid of loud noises, and he offered me his earmuffs, but that's not really what I needed. And then I met a bird that was afraid of falling out of the sky because he was dizzy. So he offered me a parachute, but that wasn't going to help my problem. And then I met a polar bear who was afraid of the cold, and he offered to lend me his winter clothes, but that wasn't going to help me either. So his mother said, I guess a lot of people are a lot of people are afraid. Yeah, I guess so, Benjamin said. Now he was getting really hungry and really tired, so they started walking home together. When they got home, Benjamin's mother made him supper, and after they finished eating, she gave him a great big hug. And it was time to get into his shell and go to bed. What was he going to do? This time, Benjamin knew exactly what he was going to do. He crawled into that shell and he yelled out to all the monsters and slimy, scary things that might be in there. And he said, good night, monsters. And then, when no one was looking and he was all by himself, he turned on the nightlight so he wouldn't be afraid in the dark shell. So that's how Benjamin solved his being afraid problem. Now we're going to read a story in the Bible about a brave and beautiful queen. This is the story of Esther, the brave and beautiful queen. I'm going to stand up so you can see the pictures a little bit better. So Esther, there she is, was queen of Persia. Even her husband, King Xerxes, didn't know her secret. She had a secret. Esther was Jewish. Esther's cousin Mordecai, this is Mordecai. Esther's cousin Mordecai worked at the palace and looked out for her. Xerxes the king, we haven't seen his picture yet. Xerxes' advisor, Haman, that's Haman right there, all dressed up in the royal robes, received a great reward, and he was very proud. Everyone bowed down when they saw him coming, except for Mordecai. He would not bow down in front of him. And so Haman was insulted, and he vowed, there's Mordecai standing up, he won't bow down. He vowed to kill Mordecai and all the Jews because they wouldn't bow down. Now, there's King Xerxes. That's what he looks like in the picture, King Xerxes. Haman told Xerxes that the Jews were dangerous and should die. Xerxes agreed and set a day to kill them. And look who's standing in the back. Remember him, Mordecai? He worked at the palace. Mordecai was terrified when he heard that, and he sent a message to Queen Esther. Here she is. Change the king's mind, said Mordecai. If I go to him without his invitation, he can have me killed, Esther replied. Perhaps you were made queen just for this moment, said Mordecai. Esther bravely agreed to try. She went to the throne room, and King Xerxes was amazed by her beauty and invited her in. Can we have dinner with Haman? She asked. Haman, here he is, was building a gallows in his backyard. He planned to hang Mordecai on it. Then the king's invitation arrived, so Haman went to the palace to have dinner with the king and the queen. There they are all together. There's Haman, there's King Xerxes, and there's Queen Esther at the back there. A man wants to kill me and my people, the Jews, Esther told Xerxes. Who would do such a thing, he asked. The evil Haman, Esther cried. Haman! Guards, put him to death. So Haman was hanged on the gallows he built for Mordecai. Because of Esther, the Jews were saved, and they celebrated with a great feast, which they observe to this day. Wow, isn't that a scary story for Queen Esther? You know, the story doesn't tell us that before she went to talk to the king, she asked Mordecai to pray for her and all the Jews that lived in the town where they lived, to pray for her and make her brave. Because sometimes we think we're brave, but we're not brave. And I know a lot of times children say, oh, I'm not afraid of anything, but I've seen children be afraid of loud noises, maybe thunder, and I've seen children be afraid of grown-ups yelling. That especially I think children are afraid of. So there are things that we're afraid of, and sometimes we have to do like Benjamin, get help so that we won't be afraid. But you know what? We have a really wonderful helper when we pray. We have Jesus who helps us. So now I have a little song to help us remember the story of Esther. And it goes like this. Here's my Esther puppet. She's not exactly the same. This one's blonde, but Esther had brown hair. Esther was made queen when King Xerxes ruled the land. Let me get Xerxes ready here. Esther was made queen when King Xerxes ruled the land, but her people were in trouble because of Haman's plan. Go tell it to the king. Esther showed she was very brave. Go tell it to the king. That's how the Jews were saved. Yay, one more time. Esther was made queen when King Xerxes ruled the land, but her people were in trouble because of Haman's plan. Go tell it to the king. Esther showed she was very brave. Go tell it to the king. That's how the Jews were saved. Now, if you don't have puppets, you can use your hands like this. Esther was made queen. You can make her crown on her head. When King Xerxes ruled the land. Now look very sad. But her people were in trouble. Oh no. Because of Haman's plan. Put your arm out. Go tell it to the king. Esther showed she was very brave. Go tell it to the king. That's how the Jews were saved. Isn't that a wonderful story? Well, you know what? You and I have a special king named Jesus. And when we get afraid, we can go talk to him. And he's not very far away. He's right beside you right now. If you have a question or if you're afraid, you just have to say his name, Jesus. You don't even have to say it out loud. You can just say, Jesus, I need help. Please help me. I need to be brave. So what did you think of that story?